Hi everybody. I'd like to call to order the Marine Municipal Water District Board meeting for May 12th, 2026. May I have a roll call, please?
Good evening, Director Ranjiv Kush,
Here.
Director Diana Mayer,
Here.
Vice President Larry Russell,
Here.
Director Matt Sampson,
Here.
President Smith.
Here.
Thank you.
And may I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any public comments on the adoption of the agenda?
There are none.
And a roll call, please.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
Vice President Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Yes.
President Smith.
Great. Yes. And the agenda was adopted, and we'll move on to public comments on any non-agenda matters. Do we have any?
Yes, 1402. I've just unmuted you. Go ahead and please speak into your mic.
James Holmes, Larkspur. I'm not sure what to make of the IJ's front page article headlined, Dry Water Supply Condition Declared for Russian River, dated April 23rd. I hope you saw it. And what does this mean possibly for the atmospheric river capture project? To put it mildly, Sonoma Water seems to have a rather expansive definition of drought. In the future, could declarations of this kind lead to a reduction in our water supply or let them raise our prices? I previously expressed concern about reliance on outside sources, but the district has favored landowners over the interests of the many more ratepayers. Your consultants, in any case, said there would be lots of Russian River water, even in a severe drought. But here we are in a comparatively wet year, and Sonoma Water is raising alarms about the level of Russian River water and projecting cutbacks. And I ask you to think about that. And I also wonder about the potential impact of the on the district of reduced Russian River water volume due to the proposed Potter Valley dam removals. Please think about these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
There are no further speakers.
All right. Terrific. Directors and general managers announcements. Ranjiv.
Yeah. Thanks, Jed. So last week, I attended the Association of California Water Agencies, our Aqua Spring Conference, together with Diana, and Marin Water had good representation. Ben, Molly, Sean, Adrian, Jared, and Haley Alicio. And I was really great to hear Molly's presentation on the current status of Proposition 218 implementation for rate setting. Particularly good to hear as we enter that process starting today, I think. Probably the main news item from the conference was the appointment of Carla Namath, who is the current director of California's Department of Water Resources, as Aqua's next executive director. She's been the DWR director since 2018, first appointed by Jerry Brown, then reappointed by Governor Newsom. So it's a pretty high-profile recruitment for Aqua, and really hope it works out. Other news item, probably the one that caught my attention, is that DWR will release Prop 4 implementation guidelines this fall, but it's still going to be a slow process after that. So actual grant funding from Prop 4 probably won't be materializing for another 12 months or so, which does affect, I think, some of our planning for particularly for watershed projects. The highlight was actually the governor coming to speak on the last day of the conference, and he gave a pretty compelling picture of water supply developments in the state during his tenure, noting that he's committed to still completing the site's reservoir for capturing stormwater and the Delta Conveyance Project, which is the proposed tunnel for moving water from the Bay Delta to the Central Valley. He also noted that they're finalizing California's next water plan and the goal of this plan is going to be to find an additional 9 million acre feet of water for California by 2040 through both demand and supply management. That's it from my side for Aqua. Jed, I have one more from the Sonoma Water WACTAC. So the meeting was on May 4th. Interesting update on FIRO. To date, they've realized an additional 33,000 acre feet of storage in Lake Mendocino and Lake Sonoma using FIRO. The Sonoma Water Board of Directors has approved the 26-27 water transmission budget, which includes our rates. The Eel Russian River Project Authority has received an $18 million grant from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to support both studies and restoration work that will underpin the new Eel Russian facility. And then there were a lot of other sort of brief updates on operations, government affairs, community engagement, and fish monitoring in Dry Creek. But that's it from me.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks for representing us.
Committee report yet?
Not yet after
That's
this.
what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good? Okay. Yeah.
Just one quick announcement. I was able to spend last Friday night with the One TAM group at their annual dinner for their donors. And it was a really good evening just to reflect on all the good work they're doing. But I just want to pass on to this staff and everybody that the One TAM organization is incredibly grateful for all the support they get from Marin Water and all the good work we're doing as a collaborative. So looking forward to another good year with One TAM.
Cool. Thanks. Larry, any comments? And I think, Larry, you were around when One TAM was formed, and I think it was formed in this room. So
Yes, correct.
thank you.
Yeah, I was. Adding on a little bit to Ranjiv's discussion of the WAC, it partially or fully answers James's question about the headline. The issue there is reducing the mandatory discharges through the Russian River. It doesn't really have much to do with water supply, but it has to do with curtailing the quantity of water that they have to release in the Russian. Are we going to do the committee?
After this, we'll just
After. Okay. That's all I got.
Okay, great. Tangential comment that I think is building on some of Ranjiv's comments earlier about artificial intelligence. I just came back from a Middlebury College Board of Trustees meeting and my son's graduation from Berklee College of Music. Woo! And without a doubt, the number one topic was artificial intelligence. All the seniors were booing it, and all the teachers are trying to figure it out. It's impacting all of these organizations in deep, deep ways. And obviously, it can and will impact us. It could impact us in ways like public comments would be made through searching artificial intelligence questions. They'd submit those. And then those actually have legal ramifications for us to respond to them somehow. So it does add a significant amount of work, burden, and opportunities for us to optimize what we're doing. So I think a more thoughtful strategy from our perspective and maybe some platform work would be helpful. And hand it off to General Manager Hornstein for any comments you might have.
I don't have any updates this evening. On your comment, we have formed a AI working group. So that's kind of the start, and we do plan to be trying to understand what's going on in the industry. There's quite a lot of activity and learning from others, and then kind of plotting out the direction with some kind of pilots and such over the next year or so.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Who has that been?
Who's on the committee?
Well, yeah. What
Internal committee?
Yeah, it's an internal.
Oh, it's for MMWD. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so now we'll move on to board committee reports. Do you have any? No. Okay. Right. Yes. Go ahead, Diana.
So the on April 23rd, we had a finance and administration committee meeting, and staff provided an overview of our monthly financial update. We're still at lower revenues than anticipated, and because of slightly lower water demand than anticipated, and but also our expenditures are a little below where we anticipated. Well, we do have a slight deficit projected for the close of the fiscal year in terms of where we believed we would end up. We also, the staff briefed us on the district mid-cycle budget. the fiscal conditions for FY 2026 and projected revenues and expenditures. We got a more in detailed look at that than we had in previous. And all of that is available on the website under the April 23rd Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'll add to that. I think yes, we have somewhat of a revenue shortfall, but it seems like staff is on top of it, and we're not in a dire situation. And some of the biggest months are coming up. The biggest learning from that meeting, and I hope the other board members saw the video. We're so proud of the capital investments that we've made here. We've increased our capital investments in infrastructure by 300% on an annual basis in recent years, which is a massive, massive impact that I think will have generational impact for our customers. But there is, I think, an opportunity for us to look at some nuances of that from an expense perspective. Our capital investment as a percentage of total revenues has gone up significantly, and our operating investments have gone down as a percentage of our total revenues. And so as we think about where we might have cuts or where we might have savings or where we might have opportunities to last through some of the revenue shortfalls, I'd encourage the board to look at some of these capital investments rather than reduce some of the operating payroll, personnel, some of the really important programs we have like One TAM and others. So I'm hoping that we can keep our operating budget solid, and maybe we can look at either pushing some of these expenses out 6 months or redistributing. And I believe that Brett is going to take a longer term look at that. But if you see the percentage is that we're putting of our funds, most of the increase in our rates has gone to capital, and I think it's worthy of kind of revisiting. And as we go into the rate setting year in the year to come, I think that'll be a really, really important part of that process. So it was a healthy discussion. Ranjiv, any committee reports?
I think Larry, are you able to do the planning committee reports?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I agree completely with what you just said, Jed, FYI.
Thank you.
Okay. On April 28th, the planning committee meeting was held. Staff provided a high-level overview of the district's water main breaks in its distribution area, including the different classifications of leaks, the roles and responsibilities of the operations staff that manage these incidents, and the involvement of outside agencies, depending on the classification of the leaks that outside agencies like the police. Staff also provided an update on the local hazard mitigation plan, which is used to support eligibility for various FEMA grants. Staff will continue to work with the regional partners to mitigate potential hazards and develop an updated version of the plan. Once the plan is complete, staff will bring it to the board at a future meeting to consider for formal approval. Staff also provided the committee on a proposed pipeline extension agreement on the Auburn Grove subdivision housing development on Woodland Avenue in San Rafael. Staff plans to bring this item to the board at a future meeting to consider for formal approval. The public may access the staff reports and video recording of this meeting on the district's website. That's it.
Great. Moving on to item 6, our consent items. Have a director to make a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any public comments on the consent calendar?
There are none.
Okay. So, yeah, and this is just one item this time, which is just our minutes. So we have a roll call, please.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
Vice President Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Yes.
President Smith.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. And moving on to item 7, our regular items. We have our water efficiency manager, Carrie Pollard. Welcome back to the room. With tremendous work we've done on water efficiency and demand and conservation. And we'll move on to our school education program, high school video contest winner awards.
Without further ado, so I'm Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. And while this is a really fun item that we have tonight, it is at the heart it's part of our water efficiency program. And I would harken back to our water efficiency master plan that we spent some time developing and making into a resource for our customers. So while our focus tonight is on high school, education is a focus that we try to bring to all of our customers so that everyone is using water wisely. And I think you'll see that throughout the theme tonight. So over to Carrie.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'm Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Manager. So in addition to developing incentive and customer support programs, water efficiency is also responsible for school education. So this means promoting efficient use to water to our school children and also taking them out to the watershed to do field trips so they gain an appreciation for our watershed and where our water comes from. At the last August, we had a planning committee meeting item that covered our school education refresh. And part of that refresh was expanding beyond elementary school field trips and classroom visits to really engage with our high school students. And that's what we're here for today. So we had a theme that we developed, and it's Your Water's Journey. We received 13 submissions for our high school video contest this year from 4 different schools. We actually had one instructor assign it as or make it an assignment for their students, which increased our number of contributions, which was great. We love that. We're hoping other teachers will do that in the future. So all 13 were reviewed and judged based on connection to theme, creativity and originality, entertainment value, accuracy of the information within the video, and composition. So, sound editing, etc. We had a panel of judges that included experts in all these different fields. So we had CMCM come and participate with us. We had Sonoma Water staff attend as well. They've been running a program similar to this for over a decade, and we thought their insight could be useful. We had a school superintendent, and then we had a number of different staff from the watershed, communications, operations, and water efficiency. So the students do win prizes, cash prizes, in addition to a certificate from the board. Third place wins $500. Second place is $1,000, and first place is $1,500. That amount is split with the student and the school. Our hope with giving some of the funds to the school is to continue to engage the school in participating, but also help build a bigger and better program and really have them be part of this be part of their AV program. Okay, so we're going to start with our third place winner. And this video was recognized for its creativity and entertainment value, along with using a diverse range of filming locations to really convey their message. And so if we can go ahead and start the video.
In the forests of Mount Tamalpais, something remarkable begins. Moisture from the Pacific gathers in fogs and falls as rain upon the ancient redwoods. The water makes its way through creeks and streams, flowing down the mountain. Here, in Marin's reservoirs, it is carefully stored, waiting for the moment it is needed. But before it reaches us, the water must be purified, filtered, and treated to ensure it is safe. Then, through miles of pipes beneath our communities, the journey continues. And finally, after traveling to a mountainous forest to a modern home, the journey of a single drop comes to an end. A reminder that every glass begins high on Mount Tam.
Nice.
So that's our third place winner. So I'd like to invite Michael McGuire from San Domenico High School up to accept his certificate from Jed.
Congratulations. Thank you. Nicely done. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Michael. All right, moving on to second place. So the panel was really impressed with the second place winner by their use of district materials to convey the story. So they took things that we had created and then used that within their video. So we can go ahead and play that one.
This is the Mount Tamalpais watershed, home to over 191,000 people's water supply, 1,000 plant species, coho salmon, spotted owls, and hundreds of wildlife species. Every drop of water in your home began here, and this is how it works. Rain collects across 22,000 acres, filling 7 reservoirs, the oldest of which dating back to 1872, holding nearly 80,000 acre-feet of water, enough to supply all of Marin for 3 full years and 75% of our entire water supply. Water then travels from those reservoirs to one of 3 treatment plants, tested and monitored every step of the way. There, 115,000 annual tests ensure over 20 million gallons of safe, clean drinking water daily. Local supply is then supplemented with water from Sonoma County's Russian River. It then moves through 908 miles of pipeline, pump stations, and 130 storage tanks to reach you. That's enough to stretch from Marin all the way to Portland, Oregon, all to get to you, just 24 hours after falling from the sky. It's clean, safe, local water from California's oldest municipal water district every single day.
Nice.
All right. Second place is Grayson Rothbart
Come on
from
up,
Marin
Gracie.
Academy. We were really impressed with the pipeline that would stretch from here to Oregon, the Oregon border. That was not something on our website. We thought it was very creative.
Nicely done. Thank you. Congratulations. Oh, yeah.
All right. And then finally, our first place winner excelled in all the various categories that we judged them on. And I think you'll see that as we view it. Go ahead.
What if I told you the water in your glass took an incredible journey to get there? It all begins with rainfall on the slopes of Mount Tamalpais. The Mount Tam watershed supports a lush, biodiverse ecosystem. The rain flows down the mountain, filling local reservoirs that store billions of gallons. The water is then pumped from reservoirs to treatment plants where it is filtered and cleaned. From there, the treated water is then pumped to storage tanks around Marin. From those tanks, the water travels in underground pipes to homes and businesses across the county. Saving water is crucial for protecting the environment, reducing energy use, and helping prevent droughts. 75% of water use is residential, so individuals can reduce demand. Take shorter showers, fix leaks, and use water efficiently. Saving water protects our environment and our future.
Nice.
Very nice. Jack Buchanan.
Good job, Jack.
I'm sure you all know why I appreciated that one so much. Call to action at the end.
That's what it is. Congratulations.
All right. Thank you. So I want to, of course, thank all 13 participants that participated in our program. Was way more than we anticipated. And we look forward to making this an annual event, picking a new theme every year and hoping to get increased engagement to more than 4 high schools and really kind of really leverage this as an opportunity to engage with our high school students. With that, I'll turn it back over to the board.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any comments, Diana? Or Rajiv?
Incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I actually learned something from those presentations. I don't know if I should be embarrassed to say that. I think I'd rather say it reflects on the quality of the students' work.
Yes, done. Yep.
Yeah, it's one first. Thanks, families, and all the participants for showing up tonight. I appreciate you guys coming here and acknowledging this because this is something majority of the people in the county take for granted and don't understand. And to be able to highlight that and engage folks means we're gonna have a stronger generation that understands how important it is to do the kind of work we're doing. And Carrie, I do understand that the winner went right to the heart and pulled on the heartstrings for that one, but great job. I don't think we're ready to put Adrian out of a job yet, though. We're still good on that.
Still a lot of communication work to do.
On a serious note, I do think, we support with the prize winnings, but it'd be interesting to see if we could support with some resources to get additional high schools on, the ones that don't have the same kind of resources, and bring those people so we get a bigger pool for next year. But great work.
Brilliant. Great. Larry, any comments? Director Russell?
No, other than to say, great job, guys.
Nice. And are these on our website, or will they be? Do we have approval yet?
Use it, and that was it. We do have approval to use them, and they'll be posted on our website. Comms has a plan for using them on social media as such. CMCM also wants to use them on their education site, so we'll get them out and about as much as we can.
Nice.
And the newsletter, we'll be linking to them. So we'll be promoting them, which will help, to Director Sampson's point, to get additional interest in the program.
Well, great to unleash creativity, and hopefully new ideas will come from this. So thank you very much. Congratulations to the winners. All right, moving on to the mundane. Our atmospheric river capture ARC project with Paul Sellier, Lucy, and team.
Guess who forgot to tell Terry there were 3 presenters tonight? Sorry about that. Good evening again, Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. I'm joined by Xavier Arias with Woodard and Curran and Lucy Croy, our Water Resources Manager. We have an update on the Atmospheric River Capture Project for you tonight. It's a fairly routine update, other than, this sort of gave us an opportunity to include an evaluation, if you like, an initial evaluation of a water supply alternative that was brought to our attention in sort of recent weeks. So we've sort of snuck that in there. And I guess without further ado, I'll hand it over to Lucy to get us going on the update.
Oh. I don't know. I don't know. I knew I needed to ask though. Good evening, Board of Directors, Lucy Croy, Water Resources Manager. And as Paul mentioned, we're here for a fairly routine update on the ARC project. So giving an update on the engineering, the progress we've made with the engineering design, the environmental review, documentation, and outreach that has been going on in the community. And then we'll end with an update on schedule and next steps. So before getting into some of the finer detail, I wanted to step back with a project this size. Sometimes we can get lost in the details. And this project kicked off last summer officially when we brought on board Carollo for engineering design and Panorama Environmental for the environmental review. So that was in the summer of 2025. And since then, the team has been working very rapidly behind the scenes, collecting a lot of data, gathering what information's out there, doing a lot of field investigations, really preparing the project for the steps that come next, including acquiring property is what we've been working on in the background. And that really occurred over the fall and winter of 2025. And then in the beginning of 2026, we also presented an overview of water availability, kind of answering some of the questions that had come up in the community. And so those are just some of the concepts that we've been talking about recently. And where we are today is that a lot of that supporting information has fed into the 30% design. So just last Friday, we received the 30% design from Carollo. Just have peeked at a few times and getting it distributed internally for review. But looking forward to having a little bit more concrete engineering design in front of us, as well as a final basis of design report. So we're reviewing the final draft, making sure that that foundational document is in shape and aligns with all the other documents that go with this project and line up with what we need it to be before we move forward. So we're reviewing all of that internally right now. And then also on the operational side, we've been meeting with the North Marin Water District operations team. As you can imagine, with a project this large, there's some operational parameters that need to be figured out. Connecting into the system that's just upstream. Actually, the connection would be just upstream of their connection. So we've been working with them to make sure that there's no issues and just that any integration with their system doesn't have any impacts. So we've been meeting with them and just making sure any kind of design incorporates what needs to happen in order to have smooth operations. And then another big component is exploring not only the North Marin property adjacent to Stafford Lake, but the Marin County property. So looking at that option as well for Pump Station B. And then as we get out in the community for some of the outreach that we're doing associated with environmental documentation, we're hearing very early on from the community, especially in Novato, about construction impacts and concerns about a pipeline coming down San Marin Drive and the impacts that would occur over that period of putting a pipeline down that roadway and how much it's used by the community. So we are listening very actively and trying to consider early on in the in engineering review how best to incorporate the traffic that goes on that road and how we can mitigate any kind of impacts associated with the project. We know there will be impacts to some degree, but how can we best go about it? And just continuing to listen to the community. We know that it's best to just move forward, taking into account what's going on. There's a high school down at the corner, San Marin High School, so there's a lot of traffic associated with schools. And so one of the big things we've already talked about with the design team is doing that work near the high school and near the elementary schools during the summer months. So that's a pretty non-negotiable for us at this point. And then also limiting work hours to starting late or early, ending early as needed in order to really not get in the way of traffic and not make things worse. And along the San Marin Drive, there's a lot of access to homeowners to their driveways, as you would expect. And so maintaining access throughout construction is a big guarantee that we need to make sure that we communicate to them early throughout. And we've also heard some concerns about San Marin Drive and coming through and leaving it in a worse condition. So we really want to convey that as we come through, we will not only be restoring it to its condition, but improving it, and really want to convey that that's the guarantee that we're holding on to, not putting it in a worse condition. As I mentioned, there has been quite a bit of outreach in the last month or two. So we just completed our scoping phase for the environmental impact report. So that is the public comment period in which we go out and seek input from the public to provide public comments on the scope of the EIR to ensure that we're looking at all that we should be looking at when we start drafting the EIR. So we had that for 30 days, March through April 13th. We also held 2 public scoping meetings. You can see on the bottom, there's a few pictures from the meetings that we held in Novato that were pretty well attended, a few friendly faces that we've seen before, a few new faces. And it gave us an opportunity to answer some questions about not only the project, but the EIR process and construction. And it also gave us the opportunity to really hear things early on what we need to consider and incorporate into the project. As the scoping period closed, we kind of tallied up some of the comments that we've received. So comments could be received through the mail, through email, through also in person at the meetings. And all in all, we received just over 69 comment letters or comments from individuals or from agencies. And as you can see on the right-hand side, that shows a general categories and how it was distributed. So as expected, many of the comments had to do with those in the Novato area, concerns about traffic and construction, and also generally just consideration of being a water supply project, considerations of why maybe look at other alternatives, such as desal, or looking at, is this really the best option? And where the team goes from here is that we take all those comments and we incorporate them into the EIR, so into the draft technical studies that we're doing to make sure that the scope is broad enough. And this won't be the last time that we go to the public. So the public will have another opportunity as we draft the EIR. We'll have a draft EIR published later this fall. And that will have another public review period to receive comments. And we're expecting that we will have a scoping summary that will be published on our website soon. So we're just finishing up internal review, and then we'll have that published on our website soon. And that will have all the public comments that we've received.
So I'll take this one. So this was sort of coming out during the scoping period. This was the water supply alternative that I talked about at the beginning. And the general question was along the lines of, is it possible to move water through the existing distribution system and into storage in Nicosia Reservoir? And the really short answer is bullet number 2 here, and that is the existing distribution system was designed to move water in the other direction completely. And given that San Geronimo is our emergency plant with a large generator that we spent time and effort installing to ensure that plant could operate even during power outages, and that it's gravity fed from Kent Reservoir so it can operate without the big pumps, it's an important treatment plant for us and one that we would not want to take out of service. And so what you have then is water that's traveling in the normal direction from San Geronimo out into the distribution system that would then be trying to compete with water going in the other direction. And that's not going to work. So we wanted to take, as we have with a number of options, I think the board is familiar with throughout the whole strategic water supply assessment process, the number of options that we've looked at, and even prior to that, in sort of earlier planning phases, it's kind of dizzying the number of alternatives that the boards had to go through. But we wanted to make sure that we gave this one, some thoughtful consideration, and that's what I hope we're presenting tonight. And so the following slides that Xavier was asked to look at how we could make this work going through the distribution system to Nicosia Reservoir. And that's what these next set of slides sort of take a look at. What sort of upgrades and changes to the infrastructure and the system might we expect? And then we've got some sort of thoughts on the challenges that that sort of thing would represent. So I'll turn it over to Xavier to take us through the next few slides.
Good evening, President Smith, members of the board. I'll get right into it. Just want to talk about the parameters when we think about this alternative, which, to be consistent with the others, we had to give it a abbreviation and a number. So what is that stands for North Marin Line 1. And it turns out, actually, once you think about it, there's always a variant. So maybe we should have said there's NML 1 and 2, because 2 different pipe paths. But the basics of it would be that it's something that is conveying water from the Sonoma system to storage rather than directly to use. And going in, it's that the concept is maximize the use of the infrastructure you got, pipes, pumps, whatever. And it would be equivalent, maybe not to ARC's potential build out, but at least to the initial phase, which is 15 MGD in instantaneous capacity. And so what you get from this, just kind of comparing it to ARC, ARC that's the blue, the green line is ARC, and you can see that's about 13 miles of pipe. And then the lower path, that's a lot more pipe, and we are trying to reuse every piece of pipe that could be used. So it reflects some reuse of pipe, and we'll zoom in on this in a minute, and some new pipe. So the red pipe, kind of at a glance, that's new, and the reason, so there's 2 paths. It could be parallel to one of your existing pipes. That's where it's called North Marin Line -1. There is a shorter path that would need to be explored, but we also considered, well, there might be a reason why that first pipe was put where it was. It's wider, so we'd in theory, you'd look at both. They're both options, and so when you think about ranges of how many miles of new pipe, we are looking at the most optimistic, which would be as few as 10 miles of pipe, as many as 15. So kind of bracketing where you are with ARC, which is about 13 miles of pipe. But unfortunately, it turns out pipe is just a small piece of this. So how it would work, this is just starting with, here's what we got today. And so we don't have any of those red lines yet. This is just your existing system. And this is a moment in time that's kind of captured here. Imagine it's a moment on a winter's day when you would be taking winter water. You'd be sending as much of it as possible straight to demand, because that's always going to be the cheapest operational thing. But then the concept here is, well, okay, but what if there's more available than that? And there may well be. Up to 15 MGD is available, and that's why ARC would exist. And so we're thinking about, well, how do we then move it to storage using some of these pipes and pumps and so on? And I'll save you some of the suspense. We would have to build some stuff to make that happen. we'd build this stuff. There is an alternate there, but you'd either build the solid red or the dashed red pipe. And the job of that pipe, even though there's an existing pipe that at this moment, the San Geronimo treatment plant is running at a low rate because prior to turning on the pumps that would enact this thing, customers need water 24/7. And when it stops raining and you decide, okay, we're going to stop putting water to storage, you need to very quickly cut over to, San Geronimo is serving water to customers. So it's always running at a low rate that can be modulated. So that's one of the drivers for some of the pipe. So there is an interface point. You have customers that are being served directly from San Geronimo. So that's called out as an interface point. And that's kind of a key point because up until that point, we can reuse the pipe. If there's excess capacity, let's use it. So that's the concept here is if there is capacity in a pipe that could help us move the water west and into storage, we're going to do it. So we looked at that. This hasn't been modeled in super detail, but the concept sort of works. There are some pipes that have capacity that would be helpful. Not all of them. So there you see going from Lucas Valley going south, that pipe is nowhere near big enough. So it would need to be replaced. And so it's shown in red, and it's about a mile of pipe. Not necessarily an easy mile. I mean, not every mile of pipe is equivalent. And some of these, you can see these hairpin curves with the red pipe. And so some of those would be pretty challenging. If you think about the existing pipes that have to follow these routes, you've got pipe bridges. And it was, even years ago, before you had traffic to deal with, it was not at all a straightforward pipe to build. So think about that. It's not all just the miles. And then there's a total of 5 pump stations that need to be, you can see starting at the top, generally they're doubling or more in size. So starting with Ignacio, goes from around 15 to around 30 MGD. And each of them is noted that way. So North Redwood goes from 9 to 24, almost a tripling. And I think that it's also important, some of them, like Lucas Valley and Santa Margarita, those have an extra note on them. Those are not really just throwing in more pumps and kind of making it bigger. They need to be resited. So we'd be looking for where do we build those things in the general vicinity, but probably lower down and significantly larger, as you can see, up to triple. So these are larger pump stations in terms of flow than the ones we have to build for ARC because they're doing multiple jobs. So that's what's kind of factored in. And there's another challenge is that maybe not shown explicitly here because we haven't figured out where it would go exactly. But you need buffering storage for one thing. Just like ARC needs a little bit of buffering storage, so too there'd be some buffering storage at Ignacio. In the big scheme of things, probably not very dramatic. I think more challenging is the buffering storage in the general vicinity of San Geronimo, where you have this changeover as you bring the pump rate up and down, and San Geronimo has to ramp from a very low rate when it stops raining. San Geronimo's got to ramp up, and on the flip side, it's got to ramp down when you decide to change. Usually, the solution for that, with the type of treatment plant you have, which is rapid sand, you don't want to subject it to huge jolting changes. So you put in storage, and there's no perfect site for storage ever. We're talking about finding a place to put, 2 or 3 million gallons. And we actually had looked at this years ago. It's a challenging place. Some of these names might bring back memories, like the Spirit Rock site and White's Hill, Blueberry. Those kinds of sites would be relevant. Storage would be a little smaller than some of the options we looked at then, but not an easy task. So that's kind of one challenge, and it's not on the map because we don't have an obvious place for it. The other thing is, think about what happens now at Ignacio's. Chemicals get added for a good reason, for corrosion control. And also because you carry combined chlorine residual in your system, so aqueous ammonia is added. So that means you're carrying, after Ignacio, you have chloramine and you have zinc or orthophosphate for that corrosion control. And we don't want to take those and put those into Nicasio Lake. So, and just as, ARC has a simpler problem, which is free chlorine that needs to be neutralized before going into the lake. This is significantly more challenging because I think the correct way to deal with chloramine, you're getting rid of the nitrogen. I don't know if this bores people that aren't chemists, but I think that you could neutralize the chlorine residual, but it would leave you with too much nutrient in the water. The correct way is you breakpoint chlorinate it. So we do that by adding a bunch more chlorine, then we neutralize the chlorine. You're getting rid of the nitrogen then in the most favorable way. It's going off as N2. That's the easy of the two challenges. Zinc orthophosphate's the other, particularly the phosphate part of that. We don't want to be piling nutrients into Nicosia, so we want to get rid of the phosphates. And if you had an existing treatment plant and it's running along and you say, okay, one more thing, get rid of this phosphate, not a huge deal because you already have a whole treatment train set up. But in this case, we don't have a whole treatment plant already running for this. So we'd be talking about the fundamentals, which is you add some chemicals to coagulate it, and then you have to filter it. So it'd be a 15 MGD filter plant is my current thinking, and it would have to start up on demand, and we have to figure out where to put that thing too. So it's a significant challenge to have a plant that's just sitting there ready to roll when you want it and does these things. So this is kind of a recap of all of that. Storage at 2 different locations, 5 different pump stations that need significant rehab or replacement, the 15 MGD treatment plant that addresses those constituents. And really, with the level of information we have, you could say the miles of pipelines kind of about like ARC. And so based on all that, it's similar capacities, but a lot more stuff. And some of these construction areas are very difficult, to site things, challenging alignments for the pipeline. So while we don't have the same level of design information, it's pretty clear that infrastructure cost is very likely to be quite a bit larger than the ARC costs. So kind of the challenges. I said going in, we're looking at phase 1 of ARC and 15 MGD. So I think we also just need to look, does it meet all of your purpose and need? We originally thought about ARC as it's got to meet not just carry water from point A to point B, but we had a bunch of other criteria besides cost. It was things like, is it reasonably implementable in the time frame, so that it's not something your grandkids are using, but it can be there, within say 10 years, it could be in service. Some of these siting and alignment challenges are at the point where you'd question, how implementable is it, even if cost weren't a factor. So that's where I'm not sure it's, if you just think about, well, how did ARC rise to the top? Think about some of those criteria and put it against this, and you can start to see how did ARC do pretty well. System redundancy. ARC is giving you another way to get water to Nicasio. And if there's another thing like a landslide that interrupts the North Moran Aqueduct, it provides that redundant flow path. This one, by contrast, is kind of doubling down on some of that fragility. It's taking pipes that are already pretty busy and asking them to do more. And you can see the complexity starts to increase. It's not all about the cost. And those capital upgrades, it's got cost, it has schedule impacts. And if you think about the environmental impact, every one of these widgets, whether it's a tank or a treatment plant or a pipe, got to figure out where to put it, how to build it, all the things you're now familiar with ARC, but it's just for a lot more stuff.
So I'll ask just a quick question. Is this, as shown by design, is this a all or nothing system? Like these are all single points of failure that would cause this project not to be able to move forward?
Right. These are all essential elements to.
Okay. So if one doesn't go, the whole thing goes. And then just an operational standpoint, would something this complex require additional staff to help manage and run?
Difficult to say at this point. I mean, we're just so focused on the capital to move things. Certainly, it's going to increase our maintenance costs. We're going to have more pumps, larger motors, all of which add to the complexity of the maintenance type schedules.
So this is the final slide. I just think you can kind of see when you look at this, that I think there's a reason why after looking at it through different lenses for the last 4 years, I think you could see how ARC kind of rose to the top.
So if there's any questions on this, we can answer now or we can move on.
Why don't we go through the whole thing and then we'll batch our questions at the end.
So that question came up while we were going through scoping, and so we wanted to address it as part of that section. But the other work that we've been working on as part of our environmental review, there's been quite a bit. So working on consultation with Grayton Rancheria. So we've met with Grayton and are continuing to work on some of the field studies that need to happen. It's a highly sensitive area that we are going to be working in. So there's field work that needs to happen at the end of May that we came for an amendment in March for. We're also continuing to do biological resource surveys. There's a lot of landscape and architectural renderings that we're working on just to really understand what are the aesthetics associated with the project. And all of this is getting wrapped into technical reports that are being prepared as part of the administrative draft EIR that'll be internally reviewed before a public draft is prepared for the fall. So as I mentioned, this is the schedule that we're working off of. So we've completed the scoping phase, which occurred in March and April, and working towards the May, June technical studies and administrative draft EIR, towards a draft EIR public review in the fall, and a December final EIR, which is an aggressive schedule, but we're working towards it at this point. It's very dependent on the comments that we receive when we go out for public review. And then a board hearing and adopting findings in February of next year. When it comes to public outreach, as you are aware, this has been an initiative that we've taken on early in this project, knowing that it's a large project that affects a large community. So we're continuing to focus on engagement with the community, with the residents, with the businesses, finding opportunities to meet with them. And with the environmental review process, we had quite an opportunity over the last 2 months. We've also continued to meet with the other agencies in the area. So coordination meetings to discuss the project, give updates, but also give them an opportunity to collaborate, also listen and hear from them what they're hearing from the communities, because sometimes it's different than what we're hearing. So that's been a great opportunity for us to continue to meet with them and have another avenue to hear updates about the project and how it's being received. We're continuing to meet with the City of Novato at the staff level and initiating meetings with the elected officials. We've also, as a part of that, updated a number of our project resources. Adrian has been working rapidly behind the scenes to update our resources as we get feedback about the project, what would be more helpful to those in the community to understand the project better. So we have an updated web page. We have also updated the fact sheet and the infographic to understand the storm from storm to storage. We've also, understood that it's not just about explaining how the project works, but understanding, what are the FAQs associated with the Novato community, with the construction impacts. So we're working on FAQs associated with that community as well. And so all of that is some of it's in progress, some of it's on our website, and we also will have a summary. A scoping summary on our website soon that has all the comments that we received. But the goal is to be really transparent throughout all of it with the community and just update as we can. So this schedule we've shown a number of times, showing the overall project schedule and have stayed on schedule at this point. So design in CEQA through 2025 and 2026, moving into construction midway through 2027, with the goal of operating by late 2029 or early 2030. Where that has taken us over the last few months is that we have had the basis of design report from the consultants over the past few months. We've finished scoping, as I mentioned. We're now reviewing the 30% design drawings and working towards the draft chapters of the administrative draft of the EIR. And that's working towards the goal of the public draft in the fall. So our next steps on this project are to continue to work with our partners in the community, and to continue to meet with them on a very frequent basis, and to have regular meetings and provide updates. We find that it's been very helpful to not only hear what they're hearing, but just keep updating them on where we are on the project. We will continue we're going to review and finalize the 30% design drawings over the next month and basis of design report, and continue to meet with the board and provide regular board updates. So with that, we're happy to take any questions or comments.
Great. You want to go first, Ranjiv?
Sure. Thanks, Jed. Maybe Lucy, first on all of the community engagement that you're managing, which I agree is so critical to, I think, achieve a better understanding of what we're trying to do there. And when it comes to better understanding, I realized that I was on the other side of this just about 2 years ago when we were doing a pipeline replacement project on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Now, I've been down San Marin Drive many times on the way to Stafford Lake. I was there last weekend, and I go down Sir Francis Drake Boulevard every day. They are not comparable. I mean, Sir Francis Drake is a very congested, narrow corridor with more turnoffs, more houses with driveways on it than San Marin Drive. And I understand that the length of pipeline that we're putting in San Marin Drive is much longer, but nevertheless, the rate at which this actually does happen and the way that disturbances are managed by the contractors. For example, where we were replacing pipeline on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard was directly in front of the Archie Williams High School. Now, I'm guessing we did it during the summer. I can't quite remember, about 2 years ago. But I wish there was some way to reflect that these things, as some type of reassurance, I can vouch for it. I can come and vouch for it. It's not as bad as it seems, even though I couldn't even really imagine doing this on Sir Francis Drake. But traffic kept moving, and we survived, and it just moved so quickly, relatively quickly. So I don't know.
I've heard similar things about the Sir Francis Drake project. I think the community has been plagued by a very long project on Novato Boulevard, which is parallel to San Marin Drive, that has been going on for 10 plus years is what we've heard. There's a bit of
right.
anxiety over another project going down a very close road that's an artery to Novato. So we're trying to provide reassurances as best we can, but there's a bit of anxiety.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I it's obvious, it's understandable, obviously. So we just keep doing our best to allay those fears. I think, Zav, thanks a lot for the analysis of the NML1 and alternative options. It feels like all the questions that the ARC project has engendered among our community, and I know there's others that we'll be trying to address following the NOP feedback. All those questions have really pushed us to kick the tires on ARC. And every time we do that, it just seems to improve our perceptions of ARC and why, as you said, it just rises to the top. So I think that's happened again with this analysis, but it's great to see such a thorough analysis. I hope that, we'll continue to provide that level of feedback to anyone that has questions about how we're moving forward. Thank you.
Great. Director Russell, any comments you'd like to add at this point?
Yes. I appreciate your thoughts, Zav, on the alternative. I think it's a little bit short-sighted, your approach. It's a solution to that issue. I don't know it's the solution to that issue. And I think that brushing off things like saying it's basically equivalent in pipe is a mistake at this point. I think we should at least do a preliminary cost estimate on it to get a feel for what the cost is. And, like I say, you're talking about putting in interim storage. Well, maybe, but it seems to me you could just shove the water in the pipeline and let it feed the system in lieu of the San Geronimo plant's discharge. So it isn't so much that the waters are fighting each other. You got pieces of it. You got the T in there that sends the water potentially into that line. And, if the line's too small, look at replacing it. I mean, it's nowhere near the kind of numbers I believe we're talking about with the current design of the ARC pipeline. So I would encourage you to recycle your thinking a little bit there, think it through a little more, and price it out, because I think that there are elements of it that will reduce the cost substantially. And it may be a time-consuming process to get it installed, but it is what it is. And, it's going to take the time it takes. I don't agree that each of these are a fail start. In other words, if you don't achieve that, this can't happen. So like I say, I encourage you to take another look at it and put some numbers to it and get away from the tummy rubbing and try to tie it down a little more to hard numbers. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Mayer. Nope.
Yeah, again, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the additional work on this alternative as we look at it. Any sense of a projected timeline for NML, or what we're calling it, compared to what ARC would be?
How long it might take to build?
Yeah, I know it's going to be a hard thing, but are we saying less than, more than, equal to, more than? Okay. One of the things I get concerned about continuing to explore something like this is looking at the numbers from the public engagement. The biggest challenge was impact to the community, impact to the neighborhood, quality of life pieces. And we're already seeing some, I don't want to say friction, but some challenges with determining where we're going to put pump stations, things like that. And the community of Novato has been very vocal about their concern about where those pump stations are done. And we're looking at 1 or 2, and this would include 7. And there's 2 north of the hill in San Fel that we'd have to relocate. And good luck finding a piece of property that's not going to be a big fight for that. So I just see the same issue we have now, just expanding, and this thing being continually down the road for that. So I'm not sure. I think we need to look too much more into it based on what we have, because I agree. I think every time we look at an alternative, it still points back to ARC as being probably the best bang for our buck in terms of what we're looking for right now. So, but I do appreciate the insight. It's very helpful to understand too. And I think it's very helpful for the public to understand. It's not just, hey, just turn the valve this way and everything's good. There's a whole bunch of other issues that come along with it. And then just back to the crux of the presentation, just keeping our foot on the community engagement pedal and continuing to go and engage, because we do need to make things right for the city that we're going to disrupt and let them know that we're not here just to plow through. So I appreciate all the work that's been done so far. Thank you.
Great. I guess I have 2 higher level questions, comments, and finishing up on the dialogue about doing some more work on that. I don't think you need to put in like 100 hours of work, but 5 pump stations, double the effort. How much would those cost? You can probably do some estimates range, and my guess is you'll come pretty quickly to the conclusion that you're giving us, but give us some numbers, give us some data behind it. And so my 2 high level questions, I guess one more maybe for our general counsel. The sense I get is that in any sort of CEQA review, when someone comes up with an alternative idea in public comments, we have to have proven that we've given it some sort of thought. Is that correct?
I think, sorry, just turned myself off. I think there's some level of consideration of feasibility. I think the extent of it is not necessarily, equal across the board. If it's possible to determine that an alternative is not feasible on the front end and doesn't meet the objectives of the proposed project, then I think those can be more summarily dismissed in the CEQA process than, the range of alternatives that we need to do analysis on in the actual environmental impact report.
Right. Because the sense I get is that, we like I was saying earlier, we could do an AI research and come up with 100 different variables and then prove that we didn't look at everything.
President Smith, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent point, not to interrupt, but it's a reasonable number
Yeah.
of options that we need to consider
Right.
in the
We've done
process.
years of work here. So I just don't know where we cross the line or not, or is that why we're looking at this in more detail, or is it because it was somewhat more feasible, or, I'm hearing desal come back again,
No,
right?
this one was just one that we'd heard from a number of different
Yep.
places.
Okay.
I don't know if it originated in
Yep.
one place and was spread. We just heard it through a few different channels, and we just wanted to bring the information to the public and the board.
So I think two higher level points. One is I'm hearing like an extraordinary amount of negative feedback from communities from Sonoma, from Novato, and from Nicasio. And I'm not hearing a whole bunch of, woohoo, this is great. I mean, maybe the people that are loud are the ones that are naysayers, but I think we have a lot of headwinds. We have a lot of education to do. We have a lot of meetings. We have a lot of political work. But in the end, some of it may not come down to the validity of this program. This is decades and maybe even a century of pain and anger at Marin that has felt from people in Sonoma, or some people that feel like we're taking water away from Sonoma, or from Novato, where Southern Marin is kind of viewed sometimes as kind of bullying around Novato and not maybe putting enough care and concern. And I think sometimes we come across as cavalier and maybe nonchalant. And I think we heard pretty loud and clear similar kinds of attitudes from Nicasio as a reverberation from efforts that happened 70 years ago. So, I think we need to be respectful of people's perspectives that may not be rooted in the reality or the data here, but continue to empathize, continue to, I would say, not say, hey, no big deal, we did it in Lucas, Valley Road, we can do it in San Marin. Like, that's not going to fly in Novato, right? They had a huge rebellion against a pump station that was going to be very, very much less of an effort than this. So we need to be deep in that community to help them understand the benefits, and not just for those communities in particular, but for the region as a whole, as well as for Marin. And I think we have a lot of work to do on that, let alone the details of the impact on the fisheries, on the potential flooding in Nicasio, et cetera. So there's a lot of work to do. And with that said, I think my third point, with one is making sure we look at alternatives, and the second, understanding the history here. Like, we just can't come across cavalier. I think the third point is that I'm super nervous that we're rushing this. Now, that's contrary to everything I've said about the fact that we are in a crisis, and I want to push, and go. But I'm highly convinced that, given the vitriol that I'm hearing, we're going to get sued by multiple people, and it's a litigious community, and it's not fun. And so I would encourage this board to be prepared, and to be prepared to defend ourselves. And that means we have to do our homework. And so we can't rush it through just because we got to go fast. We got to do our homework, and we got to be prepared to win any lawsuit that comes our way. And we got to be prepared to fight it and do it in a strong way. So I'm nervous about the accelerated timeline. And I'm nervous that until we have much more deep communication and feedback from each of these communities that has issues, that if we start spending an enormous amount of money and moving forward and get to 60%, and then all of a sudden we get hammered and we can't defend ourselves, I'm nervous about that. So I would be very thoughtful about spending tons of money before we take their feedback, answer their questions, get their support as much as we possibly can, and then move forward. Because right now we don't have a lot of these people's support. Right now we have a lot of questions, and I think what they might hear in this is, hey, no big deal. We've done it before. We know how to build pipes. 30%, it's the best option. And I think they're going to be nervous, kind of like they were nervous when they saw that we were going to increase the spillway gate capacity at Nicasio. I think they were going to be like, oh, they're just going ahead. And then they didn't have their questions answered ahead of time. So let's meet with them. let's make sure we understand what their questions are and you're doing the public review, et cetera, but meet them one-on-one, meet them as much as you can and listen and hopefully get their support before you spend an enormous amount of money. Thanks.
I have a comment, Jed.
For your report. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I could not agree with you more.
Okay, no more board comments? Public comment?
Yes, we have several. Phil Sauter and Larry Menakis.
Thanks very much for the presentation. This is definitely a legacy project which will shape our supply and budget and rates for years to come. I know we're all looking for ways to make sure it's a good investment. At the March EIR scoping session in Novato, I spoke with a number of members of staff and suggested a simple way to get a head start on maximizing the benefit from this $214 million investment. Rather than wait until 2028 or 2030, I suggested starting this fall with a single piece of paper on which we would write down the date and the amount of ARC water that we would import that day if the ARC pipeline were up and running. It would be a process similar to the process we use today to decide how much Sonoma water to bring in on a daily basis, except that this would be directly related to the new supply of winter water that would be available through ARC. Each day we'd look at how much ARC water is available from the Russian River, how full our reservoirs are, and how much rain is forecast for the days ahead. Just as we do now, pre-ARC, we'd decide how much extra ARC water to bring in and write that number down on a piece of paper. At the end of the rainy season, we'd add up the number of gallons we'd written down and subtract the number of gallons, if any, that we lost to reservoir spilling. By the end of the rainy season, we'd have a net number for the number of gallons the ARC project would have delivered if it had been in place for 2026, 2027. And we do the same thing in 2027, 28, and in years beyond. That would give us a few years of practice and a few years of data at the cost of a piece of paper and an extra 5 minutes a day to write down the daily number, no AI. One of the staff member I spoke with said we're already doing something similar to that, but didn't specify exactly what that is. If we are doing that, I'll suggest the board ask for those numbers and prepares to spend $214 million on the project. Right now, I believe our cost per acre foot is based on a net volume of 3,800 acre feet, or about 7 million gallons a day for 180 winter days. It would be good to know if our practice runs for the next few years support that number, or perhaps an even higher number. At the very least, we'd build up some virtual experience in making these decisions a few years before we go live. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Menakis and then Ed Jamison.
My comments are along a similar vein in that what we're looking at here is being able to process about 15 million gallons a day, which, if you do the math, means we're going to need 82 days minimum of pumping to get 3,800 acre feet. And the question still remains, in a deep drought, in a 3-4 year drought, will we be able to get that water from the Russian River? Will it be available? And that's really the question here. Are we really building a pipeline when we need it the most? Will we be able to get that 3,800 feet that we're talking about today? And we also have to remember that when we're talking 15 million gallons a day, this is either maximum capacity or working capacity. And there's a very good chance that's not going to happen. It could be 10 million gallons a day on several days. It may go down for maintenance. There may be other issues pumping in a dry year. And so we may be looking at, instead of 12 weeks, 14, 16 weeks, would the water actually be available? It's just a practical question that I think we need to answer about this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ed Jamison and then Martha Davis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Unexpectedly high pipeline costs have rendered the ARC approach financially infeasible. For a trivial 3,800 acre feet of annual supply, ARC 1 will dissipate most of our limited bonding capacity, preventing us from doing anything else significant to achieve drought protection. Board members, please reject this plan so that it does not doom us to catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis? I guess I can't get her. I'm sorry. I can't reach her. Maybe we can come back later.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Anyone else?
There are no further
There are
speakers.
no further. All right. I did have one more point, and Phil, your comment triggered it. I would love it, and maybe I don't know if there's a second that would make it more official of an idea. Rather than look at the last 50 years of data and day-by-day data for when we might have used ARC to implement and grab water, why don't we look at the 2020-2021 drought? Why don't we just look at those few years, day by day? When would we have triggered it? When would the atmospheric rivers have happened? What would the benefit be? And I'm definitely hearing from folks they want to see like every day forever. I know we have that, and maybe we can show that and have that available for people. But why don't we show an analysis of the most recent drought and how that would have impacted us?
If I remember, you've had some slides that are pretty straightforward on when water is available from the Russian River for a while, including up through 2020 and 2021. Did they include those dates?
I'd have to check those dates, but we did look to one commenter's note about whether it's available in the drought. We looked specifically at the worst drought we've ever had, which was 76, 77. Yep. During that time period, there was 139 days of water availability. We would easily have been able to achieve our target of 3,800.
So I think maybe like even just looking at just when your algorithm kicks in and says, go get it. And look at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just go through your mindset running this system and how it would work.
I think there's also another point to be made here too, is that we are not just solving for these minute little things. We're going into an unpredictable weather pattern in terms of the rain that we're experiencing with less certainty of when it's going to fall moving forward. And so this project, what I feel is an important component of that is it addresses some of those unknowns and gives us more freedom and more flexibility as we move forward.
Yeah, and Jed, I'll just add that, what you're suggesting is really helpful to clarify that we wouldn't be running this continuously this winter, next winter, if we had normal levels or higher of rainfall. It would really only be turned on in situations like 2021 or 1976. So that I think that clarification is really helpful.
There's comments, a couple of public comments here, and some I've heard directly that said it's not worth it. Right. Well, that would show that it's worth it if you can show 2020, 2021, 22, exactly how much water we would get and how long that would prolong our effort.
Yeah, and Jed, I think where you're heading with this, and it's just a communication component. Some people are still trying to understand the concept of it.
Let me see. Ms. Davis, can you speak up? Ms. Davis? I'm sorry. Can't get her.
Well, feel free to submit comments in any manner you wish. And,
yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Righty. Thank you, group. Thanks for the time. Moving on to item 7C. I think we're at 7. Yep. Our rate setting process and professional services agreement for cost of service water rate study. This is the beginning as we look to bring on some advisors in this very important project.
And good evening, directors. My name is Brett Uppendahl, Finance Director for the district. I have with me Greg Plum. He's a management analyst in the finance department. We will be providing many updates over the next year or so, and this will be the first one officially to kick it off. So today we will talk, as you mentioned, about an overview of the overall water rate study process. We'll talk about the consultant selection process that we've just completed. And then we'll kind of give a little bit of a roadmap over the structure, the rate structure focus areas we're looking at, and then next steps for the board and the public to follow along with. So with the rate setting process, you'll hear this, probably hundreds of times before we're done, but it's largely driven by Prop 218, which is a California law that outlines the process by which all property-based fees are charged by local governments in California. Essentially, it establishes the procedural requirements for levying taxes and fees. It covers more than just water rates. It's any fee charged by any local government that are property-based fees, as it says here on the slide. In terms of the key steps for us, we'll have to have a public hearing at the end of this, so we'll work our way towards that public hearing. There's a prior notice that must be mailed to all property owners and tenants in advance. One of the main substantive pieces of Prop 218 is that you have to set rates that do not exceed the cost of providing service. So you can't just set them arbitrarily. You have to make a link to what it costs to provide the service, in our case, to provide water to customers. And then when you do make those rates, the cost recovery methodology you have within the rate structure has to be proportional, or to the best of our ability, proportional to the cost of providing that service at each parcel. And that's the real difficulty when we have 60,000 different customers and parcels. When you're devising the rate structure, we'll work with the consultant here to make sure we have sufficient revenue. That's the purpose of the rate structure, to fund our daily operations and maintenance, as well as our kind of standard capital improvements, debt service, both our existing and any planned debt service in the future, and then water supply enhancements, as we've just talked about in the last item. So we've got to make sure we raise enough revenue to cover all of those and make sure we apply it in a way that complies with Prop 218 requirements. When we talk about the COSA, that's the cost of service analysis, is the acronym you'll hear quite a bit. It really is a step-by-step approach to developing these rates and to making sure they're sound and defensible, both while we're making them and in the future. And so the highlighted section there in green is the first step for us, which is selecting a consultant to be our partner and advisor along the way. You'll see the calendar works its way across from here in April 2006 to about May and June of 2027. So in the interim, we'll be working with a consultant to take a look at our current rate structure, to take a look at our current policies. We'll look at demand analysis, and we'll talk more about that later today, a key feature of the overall rate design. We'll also look into the financial plan, so the underlying budget for which the rates will support. And that's a process that'll go hand in hand with the rate setting process. And then the final piece of it is the cost of service analysis. So once we have our budget and our financial planning set, our demand outlined and our rate structure there, then we have the consultants help us to devise the actual cost of service. Once we have that rate structure there, in around November of next year, we'll proceed with our Prop 218 requirements, including the public hearing and the notice beforehand. And then we'll bring our final recommendations to the board and ask the board to consider and approve it. We'll follow closely there after the rate adoption with the budget approval, as we need to have the rates in place before we can approve our budget. You'll notice there at the bottom, the big long blue line with the arrow, board meetings and public outreach happen ongoing throughout this process. So rather than put them in special bullets, we just wanted to acknowledge that we'll be updating the board on a regular basis and working closely with the communications team throughout to make sure we're engaging the public and making the information as transparent and available as possible. So just to orient the board and the public towards our current rates, we've got an image of our current bill up there, and our current rate structure highlights. So the board may recall we last updated the rate structure in 2023. We made quite a few significant structural changes at that point. But kind of to sum it up, our customers currently pay for water through a mix of their fixed fees and variable charges, and the variable charges are based on the amount of water used each month. Bills are typically issued on a bi-monthly basis for most customers. We do have some on monthly billing, but the vast majority are on bi-monthly basis for now. Fixed fees, in terms of what we do charge for fixed fees, those are lower in the current structure than they were in the past, but they do include our monthly service charge as well as our capital maintenance fee. The variable charges, which are more tied to actual water use each billing cycle. We call them tiered rates because we have different prices for the different levels of water that are used. Our tiered rates have the 4 tiers to them for residential, 3 tiers in some other areas. And the watershed management fee is a 1-tiered flat rate that is designed to recover the watershed portion of our budget. And so getting into the consultant selection process. So Greg and I and the legal team worked in the last few months to issue an RFP to find out who would be the best consultant team to help us throughout this process. We issued the RFP in March, early March. We had it open for about a month until mid-April there. We evaluated the proposals internally. We convened a panel to conduct selection interviews with the respondents. We conducted those interviews in mid-April, the 14th and 16th. We made our selection internally and reviewed references late April, and now here we are today to present our findings and to present our recommendations for the board's approval. The proposals that we received were from three highly qualified firms. All were very competitive. Water Resources Economics LLC, HF&H Consultants LLC, and Raftellus Financial Consultants Incorporated. As I mentioned, we conducted interviews with each of these teams with a selection panel that includes the staff from my department as well as the legal department. All three of the firms were excellent. They all had a lot of really good experience, big depth of knowledge, and they demonstrated their ability to perform work, and they all had glowing references. Once we completed our final kind of rankings and talked about what would be a best fit for Marin Water, it was a unanimous selection for Water Resources Economics. They had a great team. They were really sharp. All the references that they had given us and all the people we had talked to that had worked with them in the past gave glowing reviews. They specialize specifically in financial planning and cost of service rate studies for California, both water and wastewater. And so they really have a good thumb on how Prop 218 works, how California Community works. And they really had a good sense of kind of the evolving legal landscape, as we'll talk about here in a minute, and kind of where things are headed. And some of the clients you may recognize here is recent clients of theirs have been the City of Pleasanton, East Bay Mud, and the SFPUC. So they're also very well aware of Bay Area water rates and Bay Area kind of water planning processes. So as we go through the rate structure itself, these are the areas we're going to focus most of our time on. I mean, we'll definitely check all the boxes, dot our I's, cross our T's, but there is kind of a continuing evolution in the legal landscape of Prop 218 as more case law is decided, more precedents are set. And so there's a couple of cases now that have either recently been decided and or are being heard at various courts throughout California. And so keeping our hands on those and being, our eyes on those and working with the consultant to make sure that what we produce and what we bring to the board and the public conforms with the evolving legal landscape will be a big focus for us. We're also going to look at comparable agencies here in the region to make sure we're aware of what they're doing and hopefully be in alignment with some of the trends that they're moving towards. We'll take another look at the balance of our fixed and variable fees. We made a pretty big shift in the last rate structure towards more variable and less fixed. And so we'll kind of analyze those and make sure those are still in the right ballpark. We'll take a look at our tiered rates, both to confirm the kind of the math behind our current tiered rates and to explore maybe some slight variations and some slight cleanups to our tiered rate structure. We have drought rates now. We don't anticipate changing the function of those, but we do need to recalculate them and make sure they're still working in the new rate structure environment. We'll take a look at our discount programs, and there's a sub-bullet there that says those are funded by our non-rate revenue. Non-rate revenue is primarily our rental income from some of the properties that we have, so it's not necessarily a Prop 218 issue per se, but it is something we want to take a look at, kind of big picture altogether. How do our discount programs look? How do they look in comparison to other agencies? How effective are they? And are there any tweaks we want to make to that throughout the rate process? And then finally, and not finally necessarily here, but finally on this list is our demand projections. And those are actually more of a fundamental piece that we've already started looking at. We've shared with the board a couple times over the last year, kind of where we're headed in terms of what we think demand will be. And so we feel, internally we need to own this one, probably more so than any of the other pieces. We need to know what our demand is looking like going forward. And so we've got a jump start on this. We will certainly wait till the end of the year to kind of pull all of our data in for this current year and review it with the consultants to make sure they're in the same agreement with us in terms of how we think demand's going to look over the next 4-year period. It is kind of a fundamental piece of this because it really sets kind of that overall base for the current rates. So if demand is going to keep on increasing, that does one thing to what rates can do over time. If demand is decreasing or staying flat, it also changes the shape of how that looks over time because we do know that costs go up over time with inflation. And so if you have a flat demand curve, then you have to make up for any difference in rates. And so it does make a difference in the bottom line rates that we do charge our customers. But nonetheless, demand is a primary focus area. And so we've gotten a jump start on that. And we're looking forward to working on it closer with our consultants. We have some slides here to share with you about the demand projections. And I'm going to turn it over to Greg here to walk you through those slides as they get a little bit, I would say, complex. And Greg is really good at explaining them. And he's done a lot of work on this. So I'll turn it over to Greg to walk us through our current thinking on our water demand.
Hey, Greg Plum, Financial Management Analyst. Nice to be here. So as Brett mentioned, we kind of wanted to just kind of understand a little bit more about this fundamental assumption that will go into this process. And before we start working with the consultant. So with the slides I'm going to show, we're not we're not trying to predict anything. We're just trying to make observations about some of the recent data we have, particularly looking at kind of weather trends, what we've seen, the behavioral side of irrigation. And so I'm going to sort of step through. I've tried to do it in a way that made sense to me to sort of just have a common sense approach to look at this. So to start it off, we're just kind of looking at the longer term trend. So this chart shows us demand from 2000 through to projected for 2026. And then you'll see 3 dashed lines there. In orange is our 5-year rolling average, which we can see is declining over this period. And then the 2 horizontal lines, the higher one is the average of the last 20 years, and the lower one is the average of the last 10 years. So just kind of a few reference points on here. So 2025, we're at just under 21,000 acre feet. That's about 27% below where we were in 2004. So on average, so it's gone down about 1.3% a year. Obviously, a lot of variability in there as well. More recently, we see where demand went in 2022. Rate structure that was introduced in 2023. I would note that year includes a couple of months on the prior rate structure, because remember there's this 2-month lag. So really our first 2 full fiscal years with the new rate structure are 24 and 25. So we're particularly keen to sort of compare those 2 years to sort of this sort of longer term trend in terms of weather. And animation didn't come through. That's okay. So what you're seeing in this chart is actually water production. And we've used that because we have daily water production versus bi-monthly billing data, and we can get a nice monthly chart. It doesn't match production demand exactly, because obviously there's things like water loss and other differences, but it is a really good proxy, and we have compared it to daily AMI data for the consumers that we have on AMI currently, and it's a pretty good match. So the bars you see, the vertical bars are water production in acre feet. So in gray, 2024, in blue, 25, and in green, the first 3 months of 26. And then the squiggly lines are weather in the same colors. And when I say weather, we're pulling data from, we have a CIMIS station in Point San Pedro that's operated by the Department of Water Resources, which we have about 23 years of data from when it was first introduced. So we're using that. So that's kind of like weather on the ground that we use for irrigation scheduling. And the rainfall as well, we'll be using that versus rainfall up on the watershed, which tends to be higher to refill our reservoirs. So what we can see here is that there's a pretty good match. These things move together, and indeed, weather is the most significant factor in determining outdoor water use. So the changes that we see in the shoulder seasons, spring and fall, and indeed in the summer. So a couple of things to focus on to sort of drives this home. If we look at October, the blue bar for 2025, we had some relatively early rain, and we saw this about 20% drop in production here, which we then saw in demand and revenue. And you can see the gap between the gray and the blue line is fairly significant, and that's showing a significant drop in ET year on year for that month. So we're sort of seeing a really good correlation there. Again, then in this March, the green bar for March, we see about an 18% increase in production, and you see the increase in evapotranspiration there as well. So just kind of, we know this happens. It's just to kind of show it visually. So I'm going to step through 3 different seasons, starting with the summer, and I'll have to kind of explain this chart step by step. So what you're seeing on the horizontal axis is, again, weather. So it's weather, but just during the summer months, so June to September, that daily average ET. And then on the vertical axis, you're seeing rainfall when it might impact irrigation, so from April to October. We've broken it into 4 quadrants. So top left is kind of relatively cool and wet, and bottom right is relatively hot and dry. And then there's a little bit of color coding to the dots, so that you'll see the brighter blue dots from 2018 to 2022 when we were experiencing the drought. And then also 2022 was the data used for the previous cost of service analysis, all in this hot, dry quadrant. Following that, 23 through 25 are in the same quadrant. 23 and 25 a little bit cooler, but still sort of in this hot, dry area. We've kind of looked at a couple of different averages over this time period. So I mentioned CMIS data is available to us for 23 years, so there's 23 dots here. And the dashed blue lines you see are the sort of median over that entire period. And then you compare that to the dashed yellow line, that's the median for the last decade. So we are seeing, as we kind of would almost expect, sort of a little less rainfall and a little drier, warmer conditions. The takeaway for me from this is that 2024 and 25 kind of straddle the typical conditions for the last decade. And so they're, to me, good data points for us to use, and they happen to be with our new rate structure. So that's kind of useful for us to sort of project going forward. So moving to
before we leave that, could you define hot and dry, or hot and cool?
Yeah, I mean, for the purposes of, it's just for the purposes of illustration on the graphic. And so we just broke the range that's on the axis into 4 different segments.
But how do you decide? It seems a little arbitrary. How do you decide what's hot?
Relative. So it's a relative thing for the data that's presented on the chart.
So the hottest and driest over the 23 years is the range. The hottest and coldest and the wettest and driest over those 23 years sets the range. And so this just shows kind of a square of those 23 years where they appear within the square.
What I'm asking, Brett, is what the numeric value is.
We can get that for you. Each of these have a numeric value, but I think we were just trying to show them in relation to each other, but we can certainly get that.
It's a good graphic. I like it, but I'd like to see a little more about it, what the definitions are that achieve these 4 boxes.
Yeah.
You just want to go through the X and Y axis for them?
Yeah. So for the entire period, if you looked at the dashed blue lines, those are the sort of averages for the entire period. So anything kind of inside, to the low, lower right of those dashed blue lines is really like warmer and drier than average for the 23-year period.
And then I guess to your point, Director Smith, so April through October on the vertical axis, on the y-axis, that's just rainfall. So that's what we define as wet, as inches of rainfall, 0 to 8. And then if you look at the x-axis across the horizontal there, it's
inches of evapotranspiration.
Inches of evapotranspiration, yeah. So it's a function of heat, but also of humidity. Is that right, Greg? How do you get evapotranspiration?
So it's kind of terminology used for irrigation. So it's the combined effect of evaporation from plant surfaces and transpiration through leaf stomata of cool season turf grass.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's clever. But I should like to see some numbers attached to it.
Okay. All right, so we're moving to fall, and this is where it gets even trickier. So as we know, we kind of see most of our irrigation in the summer months, and so what we're trying to determine here is the timing of when customers shut off irrigation systems. So on the left side, the bar chart is data from AMI for customer meters, which are for irrigation only. So things like sports fields, HOA common areas, they have dedicated irrigation meters. So there's no indoor water use on that chart. And it's for, this example is for October 2021, as we were coming out of the drought. And if you recall, we had some pretty heavy rainfall mid-October. And you can see the gallons on the vertical axis, drop from 600,000 and then down to around 100,000 in mid-October. So that's when I say full shutdown, that's what's happening. It takes time because there's a lot of customers and they're not all moving together. But we kind of estimate approximately when it is. It's a bit squishy, but it's kind of a behavioral thing that happens as we see demand drop. So we wanted to try and figure this out over time to see sort of how variable it is as we've experienced this sort of past fall where we had, water sales below what we budgeted. And so the chart on the right, you'll see the vertical axis is the full irrigation shutdown date. And along the bottom is the year from 2005 to 2025. From 2018 onwards is when we've had AMI data. And so there we've visually looked at these charts to come up with the date. So that's relatively concrete. And then the blue dots, we have estimated it, which we've kind of used the AMI data to come up with that estimate. And for the full shutdown, we've kind of used a cumulative rainfall amount of 0.5 inches to say, okay, that's a reasonable time when people are going to shut down irrigation. So that was vetted against the AMI data we have. And what we see is that the median for that 20-year period is around the beginning of November. And then it's about a week later when just looking at the past decade. So it's kind of the typical has shifted a little bit more recently. We're not trying to predict if that's going to happen or not in the future. We're just kind of observing that's what's happened for now. And we need to be prepared for demand to persist through to the end of November, potentially if it's dry, but also it could end at the beginning of October if we get those early rains.
Greg, just to interrupt for a minute, I'm still catching up. When you're looking at your summer irrigation, the graph that we were just discussing with Larry, why do you use evapotranspiration instead of just temperature?
Because temperature is one measure, but then there's also daylight hours. So if you think about how many hours of daylight we have mid-July versus how many we have in October, although it can get just as hot in October, your daily evapotranspiration will be lower because you've got the angle of the sun is lower and you've got less daylight hours. So the cumulative effect for the amount of water that plants need is reduced.
Great. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
So moving to spring, when everybody likes to start up their irrigation systems. So usually we see this from March through April. Again, you're looking at AMI data on the left side for irrigation meters, and there's about 800 irrigation meters in an AMI system. And this is for March 2026. We had this nice, warm, sunny March, which was very dry. And after about 2 weeks of no rain, was when we saw this big ramp up in irrigation coming on. So that's kind of the irrigation startup example. And then on the right is looking at the same kind of information. But here with the blue dots, we're estimating by how many dry days, which we calibrated again with the AMI data we observed. And we used 10 dry days to come up with the estimate of when people would start up irrigation. You'll see the orange and blue dashed lines are fairly close together here, so there isn't much of a shift between the 20-year period and the most recent 10 years. And it's around mid-March in both cases is the typical, but there's a huge range. It can go through till the end of April if we have rain events that happen fairly closely spaced so that it's enough to sort of prevent people from flipping the switch. But also it can happen in February or even earlier sometimes. And so we need to be prepared, when we look at the typical versus the sensitivity analysis to sort of incorporate that range. So just to summarize sort of what we just looked at, is we looked at water production. We actually did a regression analysis. So we did this for using ET, rainfall, and then seasonal factors and some behavioral factors for these startup and shutdown. And we did that for the data post-drought, post-rate increase, and we did it pre-drought as well to compare the two. And one interesting observation was that ET is the sort of largest coefficient in there, and it has shifted a little bit. It's flattened. So the rate increase and or the impact of the drought has kind of flattened demand somewhat. So we definitely feel like it's important to focus on recent data, particularly the last couple of years are our best sort of benchmarks to look at. And in terms of the summer months, those are fairly typical. And then a lot of work to do in figuring out, we can see what's typical, but the sensitivity, I think, is going to be a big thing for us to look at. And I'll pass it back to Brett.
Thanks, Rick. So this is the last slide we have for you today. We'll be asking the board here to approve our staff recommendation to award the contract for a water rate study as outlined in the staff report. We will start, assuming the board approves that, we'll start working with the consultant very soon to analyze the data, including this demand data that Greg has, and to review our rate structure and to begin the process of diving in. And then we'll work on that all summer and fall. As I mentioned earlier, we'll provide regular updates during board and committee meetings throughout the year. We'll work with Adrian's team to conduct public outreach throughout the year as well. We're hoping to finalize our staff recommendations for the rate structure in early 2027. And then we'll continue those processes for the public hearing and board meetings to approve the recommended changes that we're shooting to have take effect July 1st as part of the next budget cycle. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, for getting out in front of this and getting on it so quickly. And you set a very high bar the last rate cycle with the secret sauce in terms of demand predictions. And so hoping you do it again. A side note, how much easier is your job going to be if we had fully implemented AMI across the district?
Well, I think generally speaking, more data is better and more local data is better. So I think, I don't know if it makes it easier or not, but I think it makes it a better product if you have more local data. I think by monthly billing and a lot of the stuff we're kind of trying to grasp at to pull this behavioral data, it works and it's better than just using the AWA manual. But I think if the more granular data you have, the better. So I think we're looking forward to, once we get there, to be able to pull that data and really take a deeper dive on a lot of these levels.
Great. It'd be interesting to see how much more accurate, if you can get more accurate with that, because that's just another benefit that we don't really wrap into the cost of the system, but it's definitely a financial benefit as we project this out. So interesting to stay on top of it. And the only other thing, it's very early in this process, I get that, but the district and all of our customers really accepted, for the most part, a really significant raise or a rate increase a few years ago. So be mindful of that as we're moving forward, as we look to ask for additional funds.
Yeah, thanks for the really thoughtful, I think, use of data to start to set the benchmarks for the study. Greg, you said that your regression analysis showed that demand, the impacts of weather, were the impacts of weather on demand were more muted. Now, I was expecting a larger signal from the rate increases than what I see kind of qualitatively just looking at this. But we also can't differentiate if it's the last rate cycle per se, or accompanying behavioral changes and water efficiency technologies. But just sort of thought there might be a larger signal than what we did see, but that's not the case. I did watch the Finance Committee meeting from the last one, and I also noted that our capital budget nearly tripled from 2020 to 2027. And I was reflecting on that when I look at my own water bills, which have gone up 45% or 44.9% exactly since we passed the last rate structure in 2023. And at the time, I felt like that rate structure was one of the most important things we could do to achieve the goals that we had established for the district in terms of the capital improvement program and new water resources development. And I think most of our customers supported that because they understood. Many of them understood that we were, I think, subsidizing service delivery by not keeping up with necessary investments in infrastructure or, improving the resiliency of our water supply. But, I'm probably around a median customer, and a 45% increase over 4 years is substantial. And so I do think that as we go into this next rate cycle, being really thoughtful about the continued levels of investment in the capital improvement program and new infrastructure will have to be calibrated. I think it's not just the financial piece of that we're placing on our customers. I think it's also our ability to absorb that level of revenue and then move forward with the projects without at some point being just overwhelmed with the amount of work we're taking on. So there's that balance in there that we should be thoughtful of. And I'm hoping that we'll be considering an approach now, given all the financial recovery that we've achieved in the last 4 years. I'm hoping we'll be considering an approach that is more reflective, say, of cost of living increases and sort of follows a more standard trajectory. But thanks so much for the start to the process.
Great. Thank you, Director Russell.
As they say, timing is everything. And appropriate expenditures at the appropriate time are what solves the steep rate increases. I thought that was the most thoughtful presentation I've probably seen at the Water District. It's excellent work. It's very clever thinking, and I like it. A question, or viewed a different way, the reduction in demand is also a need for an increase in rates at a similar level, if you assume the costs stay constant. And actually, it's probably more than that because costs increase with the CPI at least. So it's a little more complicated than that. But we're looking at probably something between 1.2 and 1.5% per year necessary just to stay even if we stay on that 1.2% decline in water usage. I think we need to start thinking about that in terms of how we talk to the public. And speaking of talking to the public, I presume that we are anticipating these meetings in open session. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I would hope for.
Yes, to answer your question, that would be the plan. Open session board meetings, open session committee meetings, public events that are open to everybody. I think the goal is transparency in this, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't agree more. The last round was conducted mostly in closed session, and I found that a bit odd, as well as a bit unconventional, and frankly unnecessary. So I think it's really important that we do it the normal way this round. That's it for me. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, last round, I actually had the opposite experience. I thought we had a tremendous amount of public engagement. We went into the communities. We had multiple public hearings, and we were being sued. There was not just a threat of litigation, there was litigation, and we had to have those closed sessions to deal with the litigation that directly dealt with rates. But yes, transparency then, transparency now is critical. And love me a good regression analysis. I'd love to understand a little bit more the data that you learned from it and the sensitivities, specifically as Ranjiv was asking around, can we really identify how much the rate increase impacted demand? And, or is that more, it's just one shot, right? So it's not like you don't need a regression analysis, but it would be interesting to figure out how you can, what you learned from that data. And obviously with the dates, that'll give you much more clarity in understanding where the revenues and when the revenues will hit. So thank you for that. Looking forward to the process, and I am supportive of our service contract that we're about to engage in. Any public comments?
Yes, we have several. Phil Sauter, Larry Minikis, Eric Groves, and Martha Davis.
Thank you for the presentation. This will be the first rate setting process I've been involved in where I've understood how much of our potable water we use on landscaping and how much of that outdoor potable water is used by a relative minority of our customer base. In the past, I've been supportive of every rate increase because I understood that the district's financial model is based on relatively high fixed costs and relatively low variable costs. And I was in favor of rates that would reliably cover our ongoing fixed costs. This support was in spite of the fact that I knew my own bill would go up even though I used relatively little water. But this time around, not only am I aware of how much potable water we pour onto the landscapes of a relatively few, but it also comes at a time when we're looking at a $214 million project to bring in enough water to continue enabling this wasteful use. Clearly, this project will add to our already substantial fixed costs. And if we follow past rate setting processes, my own water bill, which has tripled in the past 10 years with no increased water use, will likely quadruple this time around. I'm certainly not alone. Most of my friends and colleagues have experienced similar increases while striving to be good citizens and conserve potable water. What's different for me this time around is the understanding that we are significantly adding to our already large infrastructure and therefore adding to our large fixed costs, and that it's time these costs, through a revised rate structure, be applied to those users who require this larger infrastructure. If we need to spend $214 million so that a minority of users can continue to use thousands of gallons of potable water on lawns, then that minority of users needs to ante up to pay for that infrastructure, and the majority of users who don't need that additional infrastructure should not be on the hook to pay for it, as we have in the past. What I'm suggesting this time around is that the rate setting process be laser focused on public outreach and making sure that every one of the district's customers be fully informed as to how our water is divvied up, how our costs are divvied up, and how our rates are divvied up. We need to make sure the intent of Prop 218 is followed and that the rates customers pay for water follow the cost of delivering that water. And I think the best way of doing that is to bring the public more fully into the rate setting process. I understand the rate consultant that the district will hire is skilled in understanding the true cost of supplying water to wasteful users, and I hope that there will be many opportunities for them to engage fully with the public and to let us know what they're hearing and what more input they'd like. Of course, this is a time to educate the public and listen to their input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for the presentations. Much appreciated. Water demand appears to be stabilizing at lower historic levels, while the district simultaneously faces major long-term costs tied to the capital improvement program addressing aging infrastructure, wildfire resilience, fuel reduction, and future supply projects, making the balance between fixed fees and usage-based charges increasingly important moving forward. I also believe one reason we are seeing lower demand is that the last rate increase itself, which I had previously suggested would likely become one of the district's most effective conservation tools at the lowest implementation cost. As future rates increases occur, I think it's important to recognize that per capita usage will likely decline again. And those behavioral changes should be incorporated into long-term financial and demand projections. Of course, no one likes rate increases, but I think most people recognize that the cost of maintaining critical infrastructure are rising rapidly everywhere. I support rates that honestly reflect those realities. And what matters most, as was spoken here tonight, is that it's a transparent process, and I'm glad that's being addressed this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Eric?
This is Eric Groves. I had not really been aware when we talk about water demand that there are other obligations besides the use of the water for potable use. And those are quite substantial. Now, much of that water it falls into the reservoirs by rain. And so it goes back out in the creeks and through evaporation without actually engendering extra costs. But to the extent that we actually buy water and bring it in, and then it falls under these obligations to fill the streams and so on, I think those things should be incorporated in this rate process. So I'd like to see, when we talk about demand, we talk about the whole system demand. And then separately, we can talk about the potable water demand, because there's two things are interrelated and going to be a complicated effect to disentangle as you go forward.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, please. Ms. Davis?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. I apologize. I'm in a very spotty area. With respect to this discussion, I just want to thank the staff for the excellent presentation. I really agree that the very thoughtful laying out of the way in which water demand is shifting and how that relates to specific climatic conditions is really important. And also, I'm familiar with all the firms that you interview. I agree with the staff that they're all excellent. And I think Water Resources Economics would do a great job. I was unable to speak on 7B. I don't know if there's an opportunity to do that still this evening, but I do have comments that I can either provide
Yep.
orally
Yeah, no
at
problem.
the
Go
end of
for
the
it.
meeting or later. You want me to go
Yep,
for it?
sure.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking on behalf of the Nicasio landowners, and specifically, we're very intrigued with the alternative proposal that was described in the staff's PowerPoint. It is a variation on a 2022 concept proposal that was made by your consultants, Woodard and Curran. It's in, I think, Tech Memo number 2, Appendix 2A, in which they recommend that your staff consider improving the capacity of Marin's distribution system to deliver more winter water from Sonoma directly to the customers. Now, there is a significant difference between Woodard and Curran's concept proposal and the staff's presentation, because Woodard and Curran did not include the concept that they would be pushing the water up to storage in Nicasio Reservoir. So there's not miles of pipeline to deliver the water. There's not the treatment plants that was described in the presentation this evening. What the consultants did evaluate was a simple array of pipe, valve, and pump improvements that could increase specifically the amount of winter water delivered to more of Marin's customers from San Rafael to Ross. And this was a high-level analysis. So it really is saying this is something that the staff should investigate further. And even though it was a high level, they estimated that the district could gain roughly 2,000 acre-feet a year of winter water at what appears to be a much lower cost than the ARC project. Unlike the ARC project, though, a key benefit of the consultant's suggested approach is that Marin customers will receive the full value of every drop of water delivered from the Russian River this way. In the ARC project, when the district pumps it up into Nicasio, we still run the risk of losing the expensive ARC water stored in Nicasio, now at $4,000 an acre foot, to evaporation or uncontrollable spills from the Nicasio Reservoir. But the most important and really interesting benefit, it's a double benefit from the consultant's 2022 concept proposal. Every additional acre foot of winter water served directly to Marin customers means one less acre foot taken out of Marin's entire reservoir system. So what this means, if Marin can distribute an additional 2,000 acre feet of winter water to its customers, the district should be able to keep as much as 2,000 acre feet more water in reservoir storage and carry over much of that water in multiple dry years. So in aggregate, that's potentially a 4,000 acre feet of dry year benefit from the Woodard and Curran's concept proposal. So if additional winter water is available to Marin consistent with protections for the Russian River, delivering this water directly to customer appears to be the most climate resilient, energy efficient, and sustainable way to improve Marin's dry year reliability. So in agreement with a
Thank you
number
very
of
much.
comments that directors
Appreciate
made
that.
this evening, this is an
Ms. Davis,
alternative that
feel free
merits a
to
much
submit
deeper.
any additional thoughts if you want in writing. We're more than happy to look at it and talk to you directly. Director Hornstein, sorry, General Manager Hornstein. Comment.
Yeah, just a brief comment on the commenter that we just heard from. I believe the references are in-system improvements, and that's a component of our water supply, I think accurately characterized, very attractive, and that's baked into our plan going forward. So we are moving forward.
So we're doing those things right
Yes.
now as they were suggested.
Yes, it's part of our overall water supply planning efforts.
Okay, great. Let's make sure that there's a conversation here and that everyone understands. Okay, any other public comments?
There are no further speakers.
Okay, great. So move on to, nope.
No, we need to make a motion
Okay,
on
got it,
the
yes.
professional services agreement.
Thank you. Motion, please.
I have a comment before that.
Yes.
I'm a little shocked to see Bartle Wells didn't make the short list. Did they submit a proposal? They produced the last COSA.
They did not submit a proposal this time.
Do you have any idea why?
We haven't reached out to talk to them, but I do know that, there are various agencies looking for consultants during this time. And so maybe they just didn't have the resources to apply, but I haven't asked them personally.
Okay.
Great. No more comments. Motion, please, to approve.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
Vice President Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Yes.
and President Smith.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Motion passes. And now we'll move on to future board meetings.
Yes, good evening. There are no changes to the meetings that are mentioned on the list. There's a planning committee meeting this Thursday, not Tuesday. Sorry about that. And there are 2 closed session items following that meeting. Then we'll have our next regular board meeting on the 26th and the Finance Administration Committee meeting later that week. Just a friendly reminder, June 10th, the board has agreed to a special closed session. And also, I believe it's June 11th is our employee recognition or appreciation that day.
Yep,
And nothing else. Yeah. And I don't have anything else.
Okay, great. So now we're moving on to our closed session and we will reconvene afterwards. Public comment on the closed session.
There are none.
Okay, terrific.
Thank you.
Okay, we're reconvening from our closed session at 8:40 p.m. We have nothing to report. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. I get it all right, Matt?
It's 8:45, but yeah.
Thank you.